Hi everyone, this is Jo. This is another SOMNIUM series. This is number 3 that we're up to. We have Trevor here, Jen, Sandy, and a few other people that might jump on a bit later. We're discussing a number of different things, recapping from last week, about 5D, symbols, archetypes, and metaphors, dreams and visions, and if we get time, the trilogy of the Goana and Serpent. So that's sort of the outline of today's talk. So that was my husband talking to my dog in the background. So Trevor, you wanted to just recap on some things that you didn't feel you answered last week on the ley lines and with Jen. And about a topic Sandy brought up about the vortexes. So I'll hand over to you.
Yeah, it's an extension because you know how I digress and then I'd forget to come back to the point. So with Jen, and she was asking about the animals and that, and I mentioned that if you're looking for certain things, it's almost that you program the mind to see something. Okay. So, you know, the mob that study the particle and the wave, or the wave and the particle, and they say, you know, compress the wave and you produce the particle. Right. And anyway, the thing is that you hear some people say that, but it's actually not true. It can be true, a truth in certain circumstances, though it's, again, one size does not fit all. You know, it's not always true. So you folks have probably seen this. That's not the lighting is. You probably, oops, wrong way. You've probably seen that before. The light's not really good on that. Just trying to get this. Okay. So you've got one object there and you got different viewpoints, and you see the shadow of that object gives you something which is true, and then another viewpoint, something which is true, another viewpoint which is true, but none of them actually represents the truth, so to speak. Yeah, that's a rule. That's a good graphic. So that's the point that I wanted to make there, because let's just say I'll pick an animal which is easy for you to observe in this modern environment, and that's a cat. You watch cats, maybe not all, but many cats, they will go and they will have their sit down place where it's the hottest in the house. You take your little EMF meter and whatever, and you go and find. I mean, we feel it with body to us, but if you got meters, use it, you know, to substantiate what I'm saying. So cats are a classic of that. They're actually drawn to it. You know, the hotter energies, and I'm unable to say why why they're able to do that in a physiological sense. Because we know that those particular vibrations at those intensity or frequency can cause psychological and physiological disease or imbalance, yeah, within humans, and why it doesn't do it to cats. That's a curiosity that I don't know. However, when we look at natural law, we have the natural law of permissions. And I'm not sure whether I used this example once before, but someone said to me on tour, said, "Oh, that implies that there's, you know, like a god or whatever." And I said, "No, you're thinking like a human." I didn't want to be submissive, but that's just me, blackfly way. You know, you're thinking like a human, because the law of permissions, it doesn't imply that there's an entity at the top saying you can do this or you can do that, or you can't do this or you can't do that, right? So the example I give is this: you have a snake and it's toxic, and it bites a certain animal, and that animal succumbs to the toxicity, and that snake then bites a bird, which is a different class of animal, and nothing happens to the bird. So this is the law of permissions. The poison has permission to operate within the physiology of the mammal, but it doesn't have permission to operate within the physiology of the bird. And so this is the way we need to be looking at this law of permissions. It's not an entity saying you can do this or you can do that, because when you look at natural law, it's all the discussion of physics and chemistry. It's energetics manifest in the third dimension always becomes an issue of physics and chemistry. And so that's where the law of permissions is applied in the first instance, before we get to apply it in the issues of morals and ethics that we abide by at the conscious level. Yeah. Okay. And so there's others. There's things like snakes. We tend to, well, I have experience to me. I've tended to notice them more frequent in the hotter areas. Now, I will also say that that can be circumstantial. In other words, that's experience to me, and we can all be limited by experiences to us. It just may be circumstantial that I've noticed those things. While I'm on that issue, when I was talking about the reptilian business, what I want to say, because it's related to what I just said about circumstantial and seeding thoughts that we cause to manifest. Okay, because when I witnessed that, I was calm. When I went downstairs after, the processing mind to me was doing, I was going, was that a hologram? And then I thought, hang on, there was the telepathy going on, so it wasn't a hologram. Then the next question I'm asking myself, did I seed that because I was feeling something that I've never felt before? That was the first time, and I had that feeling when I was walking up the stairs, and then, when I met the woman, and sort of just had this feeling, and then after that happened. And so I'm thinking, did my mind, create that thing, the situation? But the other thing was, I was pretty clear there were two entities there. There was the woman, and then there was also the reptilian. So that's what I know. There's different narratives. You get takeovers and whatever, and what I refer to as the piggyback on those narratives. So at the end of the day, I still had to question self as to why did I perceive something, because perceptions are based on belief, experience, and knowledge. So anyway, that was that one. And also, with the vegetation, and there's different types of light, when they're talking about the songlines and they're looking at all these photos of the stuff that's on top and how it's affecting vegetation, you get other ones, and they'll go straight through a forest, and there's no difference. The vegetation doesn't part or whatever, it goes straight through, So that it's again, not one size fits all. You may have certain areas where you got geopathic stress, which is causing the songline or ley line to lay or to align in a certain path, because it can follow a vibratory field that's already there, geopathic stress, and then that may be causing, when we see these vortexes and really hot lines, and we see all the gnarled trees and they're all twisted and everything, and they grow away, but you don't see that on all. So that anyway, that's I just wanted to add those extra things there, Jen. All good?
Thanks, Trevor.
No, you're welcome. And now the next one was with Sandy, because afterwards, after I suggested I'll have what she's having, I like half an hour after the session, and I'm sort of going to bed and whatever, and I go, oh my gosh, why didn't I realize something, which I'm going to cover now, because I should have realized it straight away. That type of vortex energy that she was on. Okay, and she's saying it's uplifting, and that's exactly a term that I use. And when we're having a look at vortexes, there are two principal types, and there's variations on a theme after that. There are downwelling and upwelling. So when you're on that type of vortex, that's an upwelling. But the word of caution that I should have picked up because I know this stuff and I should have said this straight away, but I was so engrossed in listening to that lovely story and everything, and I just didn't join the dots in the moment. The caution is this: I've discovered 6 of those, and I've heard of a 7th one. 2 of the ones I discovered are suicide jump spots. And the third one, which the story was related to me, the lady that was unbalanced was standing right on the edge. She said, "Oh, I can fly." And it looked like she was about to jump, and someone went and grabbed her, and someone else in the group said, "That lady's not very mentally stable anyway." Okay. So this is the point that I want to make here. When you take others to these sites, make sure they're mentally balanced, because that uplifting thing, it makes you feel as if you can fly. It makes you feel like there is no fear, you're invincible, you can fly. You just want to take off. We've actually coined some of them as takeoff vortexes. Okay, but 2 of these that we found in Sydney, and I didn't know they were suicide spots. And I walked up to one and I saw all these names engraved onto rock, and I could feel the energy. And someone said, "Oh, that's a black snake, sorry, a brown snake dreaming down there. Yeah, you're going to have a look." Anyway, went down there, and then I saw these names carved in the rock. I thought, well, why are these people doing that? And then the lady that I was with, she come off after, and she told me this is where people jump. So, and then it becomes a known site to do that, and then other people go and do the same thing. And that's the type of energy that was there. Exactly that. It was just straight up and make you feel like you're lifting off. So hopefully that's worthwhile information for you, Sandy, particularly if you take others for the experience. Yeah.
Thank you, Trevor. Much appreciated.
Yeah. No, you're welcome. And as I said, it's when people don't have a sense of balance, a mental framework of balance there, that it can be potentially dangerous. So that's the caution. But if you're taking people there that are balanced and you just tell them, what the potential danger could be for someone. Even when I take people to the morphing vortexes, I make sure that they're well and truly balanced people. We're not going in there for a party or whatever. It's just so that they can see a next level to, validate all the other stuff we've been learning about, that these things are real. All right, so that's the extensions for the ley lines and vortex stuff.
Thanks, Trevor.
You're welcome. Now, sorry, was there any other questions that might have arisen now that I had put that in?
Jen, Sandy, did you have any other questions around that? Nope, they're good. Eh?
No, thanks, not at this stage.
Okay, thanks, Sandy.
So I'm good too. Sorry, I'm just having a munch, so that's why my camera's off.
That's all right. Thanks, Jen. So Trevor, then you were going to talk about 5D has always been here.
Yeah.
So what's your take on that?
Okay, so I came across this concept of this 5D, and it took a while to really absorb it. I mean, I wasn't in any rush. It's just circumstantially, someone says this, circumstantially I read this, and this is going back, 7 or 8 years or whatever, when these sorts of things start to kick off. And then you see more and more narratives which are sort of, they're like parallel, but there are differences in the narratives. And you go, okay, well, this one's full of AI stuff, because they're saying, oh, your body's going to change into a silicon-based away from the carbon-based. I'm thinking to myself, silicon-based? AI is silicon-based. It's anyway. At the end of the day, apart from all those narratives, when I'm looking at some key concepts within those narratives, I often going, well, Aboriginal mob been doing that for tens of thousands of years. And then the other thing is, there's a fellow, and I'm really bad at quoting people's names because I've got too much in here. And where he was saying, he was talking about these cycles and the ability to tap into certain levels of consciousness are more extensive or greater, create more probability of tapping in when in certain vibratory fields. And he's quoted this cycle. It's quite a long cycle, and so humans sort of get into the stuff and then they lose it again, potentially. And what happens is this: if you've got the egregore, which really operates from the similar type of thing, what they call a herd mentality or a hive mentality, right? The egregore, and everyone's following the same thing. If you got someone who comes into prominence and then they see something, then everybody starts doing it. So when you get vibrations that usually they're what do you call it? Big time events that change things on the planet, huge volcanism and all that sort of stuff, and people stress and whatever, and then they get someone to follow and whatever, and the egregore starts to go down in terms of I don't know what the right word is, density maybe, and then after X amount of hundreds of thousands of years, and it goes back up again. So this guy's explanation was actually quite good. I need to find that video so that I can make better reference to it. But I recall it was quite good because it made a lot of sense, not only at a logical level, but also at an intuitive level. Because often when you join dots, you're applying intuition as much as you are applying logic. And I feel that it's good to have a balance of both, in the deciphering there. So this period is now where the consciousness basically wakes up again. And then they put all this label, the 5D. But when I've looked at a lot of the things that they are saying that it's going to enable, well, the Aboriginal people, now, they're not all at the same level. A child has still got to learn stuff. Teenagers still got to learn stuff. Someone in their 30s has still got to learn stuff. Someone in their 70s has still got to learn stuff. But overall, like the elders and the keepers of the knowledge, they're basically already in this groove of what they're referring to as 5D consciousness. And for those of you who've seen the full natural law presentations that I've done, describing the holarchy, the sovereignty within unity, the accessing the full range of sensibilities. So that's about detecting, deciphering, and deciding, but with a cognitive power, if you like, or at a particular cognitive level that is not, how I said before to people like thinking like humans. Well, they got this interface with the other dimensions, whether they're in a sleeping dream, whether it's a waking vision, whether they're on vortexes or songlines, particularly like things like the morphing vortexes. So that they already got a really good handle on this is not the only place that you are existing. This is only a portion of you in this body. And that's why we refer to it as localized consciousness. Okay, and that's going to be relevant when I get to the Goana and the serpent later. So at any rate, at the end of the day, I should, at some point I got to write these things down and say this balances that, this balances that. In other words, from the narratives about 5D, and then from the narrative about behavior to stimuli that the original people were progressing through to justify that statement. At the moment, it's a little bit abstract because I'm just making the statement. But there's so much there. And as I said, anyone's been to the natural. But the problem is with that, not the problem, the issue is when I do those natural law presentations, the minimum I can do is 2 days, that's 16 hours. And then usually they're 5 days, So there's a lot of stuff in there to be. That's why, like when I'm in Vienna and all these people got, what do you call them, PhDs and everything. I mean, you really got to know your stuff. And so it just doesn't, to make succinct statements, they're always going to be sort of seemingly abstract. There's just it's very hard to get a lot of stuff to. There's just so many dots to join. But anyway, so
Can
that's the thing I wanted to say about the 5D. Yep.
I was just going to say something, Trevor. It makes sense. I understand what you're saying, and I'm sure the others here would too, is that if like you've shared things, and I think I've shared things in other groups where we know that elders have been able to teleport themselves physically and in consciousness to other parts of the country. That to
Yep.
me is 5D consciousness. And I'm always a
Yep.
little bit like you about that word 5D. I mean, it's like anything. It's a construct that
Yep.
allows people to kind of understand something. And if we think about you know a lot of the indigenous, they had a direct link with this type of thinking and awareness and consciousness, which has been dumbed down and stripped away by the
Yes.
oligarchs in the Western
Mm.
worlds. But so
Mm.
I get what you're saying, and how that's always been, it is always been here. It's our awareness to it.
Yep.
I feel that
Yeah.
we're the awakening is our awareness to that level of consciousness, but it's always
Yes.
there in the field. Everything's in the field.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
That's excellent, Jojo. That's good, because one thing I can say here is that apart from what I just covered with the original people in the yesteryear, because now when they got drugs and alcohol and money system instead of love system and everything else, they're not they're thinking in the new egregore anyway, right? So they're not accessing that. So when they're talking about this 5D consciousness and the shift, today there are certain people, even probably the ones in this group, I know when I meet them, they're already thinking, they're feeling heart-based, they're feeling at this level of consciousness anyway. So when they're talking about the 5D shift, what that really means to me is that the vibrational fields are modifying such that more people will be able to just fall into the next groove. Instead of just one or two scattered here or there, there's going to be more. Yeah. And so this could also include what these narratives they talk about, indigo children and all this type of stuff as well. Yeah.
Totally agree. Totally agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think Sandy had a question for you.
Yep.
Are you there, Sandy? Yep.
Can't hear. Mute.
Yep. Are you there, Sandy?
Yep, can you hear me?
Yeah, yep.
Yeah. Can now.
So I look thinking about the ley lines. Sorry, my video is a bit dark, but I've also, apart from the energy vortexes that I've crossed, I've also crossed some, and I don't know what they are. It's like I hear, it's like one language, but it feels like, or because it's a feeling rather than a hearing, because I can't understand it. But it's like this very, very fast language of all of the languages in the world. And I don't know, is that the song line that I'm hearing? Because I've been asked by someone in America, because she's heard it as well, and she tried to speak it, and it's very fast. It sounds a bit like tongues. It sounds a bit old, but it sounds like ancient languages all blended in together. And it's when I cross a line, I hear it. And I'm wondering if you know what that is. Is that a song line or something else?
All right. I'm just going to go intuitively into that one. Just getting a feeling from when you're talking. And firstly, if there is something there, where is it? It's in the memory field. And what did we already discuss about songlines? They're the integral part of the memory field. Okay, they got the hardware, which is the lines themselves, and then they're loaded with intent from the conscious and they go in there, and they're retained there with as memory of data within the memory field. So even when you got Native Americans knowing about in original Australians and vice versa, and it's in the narratives of both the Native Americans and the original Australians, and you're saying to yourself, well, they're doing this for however long before apparently Christopher Columbus and Captain Cook and the Chinese that did stuff, 1,000 years before them, and and all this and more. So we know there are two things, because we use it within the country here ourselves, and that is use them as maps and use them as transmission lines for story, and it stays in the memory field. That's why we're singing this. Okay, so that's in Australia, and then we got that big line that comes from Hawaii straight into Wollongong, and there's others. The Bali line comes straight through East Darwin here down to Uluru, and then to now I've discovered goes all the way through Barnsdale, which I only discovered the other day, which is cool, in Victoria. I sort of knew it, but I didn't have the term of reference of the Bali line for down in Victoria, but I knew the one that was being spoken about after I did a little bit of investigating. So to answer the question there, the data is there in the memory field. If you've tuned into that particular radio station, just to use an expression, and you're getting that. Now, who put it in there? I wouldn't be able to tell you, because some of the stuff you can get in the memory field can come from off-planet entities as well. So that is the area of caution when you start to, you see certain religions, they say, oh, if you start saying this or you start doing this or behaving like this, it means the demon got you, right? Well, that's their way of saying, we don't know enough about that stuff, and what we don't know about, we're fearful of. However, at the same time, there can be things that you really need to go inwards, because to core, and sense, is it harmonic or disharmonic? And if you think there's a bit of humbug there, or even the Native Americans, they got the expression translated into English, which is the trickster, and then they applied it to some of the Aboriginal stuff here as well. Okay, so it may seem that it's legit, bona fide and everything else, but it's a covering the hidden hand, so to speak, if you know what I mean, the trickster. So you really got to go into core and ask self, am I getting any benefit of this, or is it merely a curiosity? And the reason I put it like that is, I've referred to before the attractive distractors and the distractive attractors, and they're the things that take you away from core. So you really need to ask, are you getting any benefit of it? Because I've already made the point before a couple of times, everything incarnate in the third dimension got to work out what is helpful and what is harmful. So that's the thing. The distractions are distractions. What you're really focusing on, is it helpful or is it harmful? So if you get a feeling that it's harmful, then fine, you just go, right, not welcome here. Don't interfere with me. And if you think that it's something there that could be beneficial, that's okay. And you might need to sit with it and explore with it. But at the same time, you might think, well, I'm curious enough just to find out a little bit more. And that again is okay if you're a mentally stable person, because at a certain point, if you get any detection whatsoever that there's something, just the slightest quiver of doubt coming in there, you say, nah, this is bogus. Yeah.
Yeah,
not sure if that's helpful, but
thank you. It's never felt negative, and it's never felt like there's been any intention from it. It's like I'm just listening into the memory field, and it's not really giving me necessarily information other than I feel completely like it's a 0 point, like very, very neutral, and that I often feel like there is some sort of kind of natural law coding in it, but there's never a kind of like it's not influential. It's not about gain or loss. It feels very 0 point. So I just, it's like you just come across a story in the memory field, but it's of a language that seems like all of the languages. That's how it feels, but it doesn't feel negative or positive. It just feels very neutral.
Yeah. But that's good if you feel okay with that, and that's I suspect there would be stuff around like that. Not that I've experienced it, but I've heard other people talk about similar things. And when you brought it up now and said you also met another lady, or spoke to another lady about it, so yeah, I've not experienced that, but I strongly suspect there will be what I would refer to that as seed information. You know, a lot of things happen after the seed germinates. Yeah, but that's like seed information, basic information, basic things that cause things to come into form, but put into language. Yeah.
Thank you. That actually makes total sense. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thanks, Trevor. So the next thing that was on our list was it was sort of like the archetypes and symbols and elements and dreams and visions and stuff like that. So we had sort of like the mechanics around that. So I think this started because I was talking to you, Trevor, about Agnes, the tree, and how her spirit came out and spoke to me. And when she spoke to me, she was a very gnarly sort of, just going to change the view here. So when Agnes came out as a spirit of this tree, she's this big gum tree next to the house. She was, as I said, very gnarly, and she spoke in a frequency, and it was like a like all these really strange vibrational sort of sounds, but I was able to understand what she said. And she said to me that she was the matriarch tree of the property, and she said that she was quite humorous and said, "You humans, you think we're just stuck in a tree when we're not actually just stuck in a tree. We actually come out and we dance and we're a family, and the spirits of the trees and the plants are a family, and we join in and we have gatherings and we meet and we watch you, and you know, we kind of laugh at you because of your perception of us." And one of the things you said to me during the week was about language and how she knew to create my language, even in a vibration, to send me that message, but I don't really have her language. Yeah. Remember when we spoke, you said it's about how she understood my language, and how to transmit it.
Yeah. So even with telepathy, like telepathy is like same but different. I'll be careful not to go off on the wrong tangent here. If you've got information, that's data. The next thing that you have, once you have information, is you have communication. What else can understand that data? Okay. So humans are really just thinking, we hear human voices and their words, or we see symbols like the ones that are on display behind me there, the square, the circle, triangle, and they'll have a subliminal input to what you're getting from something if you're looking at it, right? So it's information in a pictorial form, but often we're using the sound. And the curious thing about the sound is that when you're engaging in telepathy, why is it always in the language that you know, when the other entity is not necessarily anything to do with either being human, or they are a human, but they're from a different language group, and you know that they do not know language to you. And yet you do the telepathy, and the mind can always decipher it because it's in a language to you. That's a really curious thing. Yeah? Because I've had trees talk to me, and I know what you're talking about earlier or referring to is what I would probably put in the realm of elementals and divas, you know, and we know all that sort of stuff's going on. And but when they're talking or when they're communicating to us, it's in the language we know. And it's happened to me twice in life, to me, like full on, and I'm going, whoa. And not that I was, you know, it was just me, because I'm just going, oh wow, okay. But I'm listening because always, if you know, it's all about the data. If you close your eyes and you aren't able to see the data anymore, then you don't know what it's doing. So don't take your eyes off. But anyway, so okay, one of these this huge tree, like way wider than my fully outstretched arms, and could be 1.5 of me outstretched arms, you know, around at the base of this tree. And we're living pretty much underneath the extremities of its boughs. So the trunk was probably about 15, 16 meters away from the cottage we were in. And I was sitting there, and it said to me, 6 weeks, 6 weeks. And I'm just looking, where that, and now I'm looking at the tree, and I knew it came from the tree. Yeah, it was just like, it was the tree. And I'm going, whoa, okay. And then I had to work out what it meant. Partner to me came home from the shift, because this was just a place we were caretakers on this property in the hinterland of the Gold Coast. Partner to me came home. I said, Dad, I got told by that tree 6 weeks. I think we got to get out of here. She said, okay, because she's really switched on. She listens. We listen to each other and whatever. So we started looking for a place. And you know what? Virtually 6 weeks to the date is when we had found a place, organised to rent it, etc., in northern New South Wales, and where I ended up living for 4.5 years in that one house. And it was virtually 6 weeks to the date when we left that property. And that tree knew I needed to move, because where I went to, I was the person that was instrumental in stopping the government, because I was the one who wrote the letter that stopped the logging process that would have destroyed that sacred site, which is a significant, very, very significant site within the Australian continent, and that's the site of Wollumben. Very powerful vortex complexes, multiple of them. But at any rate, and that's also the place I came out when I tracked the energy from Wilpena Pound. I'm not sure whether I've covered that story with you, but I don't want to digress too much. So that's what that tree told me. I want to share another one with you. I was working with a mate who's a dowser, which I met serendipitously, and again in northern New South Wales. He walks one direction with his pendulum. I walked the other direction with body, and we cross over and we come back together then, and we compare notes. And he always senses it, gets a few things I didn't get, and I always sense a few things he didn't get. But generally, our maps are the same. Okay, so for you know, sort of 98.5% of the maps, they're the same. So, and that's really good correlation. I've been doing that this morning here with Costa. He's been all over here with all his instruments and his rods and everything fine-tuned. He can do it with the body too, but he uses the instrument. So I go with the body, and I, you know, make certain notes, and I already know, and see how it correlates to his instrument. So it's really good doing that sort of thing. Now, I went out to the back of the house and went through a inner enclosure fence. So it's a very large property, but there's an inner enclosure fence around the house. So that's like to keep the pet dogs in a certain framework, if you know what I mean. Anyway, and I'm looking up this rise, and it's all cleared, and it's all national park on the right-hand side of this fence line from where I'm looking. So that's to the north is the national park, and the fire break is very, very wide. So there's a fence line, and then there's a very wide fire break. You know, the standard is 4 meters. This one would probably be 3 times the width of a normal fire break, which really makes sense because of the amount of fuel in the forest here. But this one solitary tree in the cleared paddock right next to the fence, on the inside of the fence. Okay, so for whatever reason, they never dropped this tree, but they cleared for cow pasture and everything else, left this one tree. this tree said to me, you come up here and go right. So I went up to it and I looked up to the right and I could see where it was standing, and it was on this, right at the base of this spine. I had no idea. After I met Uncle, I said, Unc, I was at this place. This tree told me to come up here and go right. And I explained the place to him. He looked at me and he sung me in because I just told him something that they never told the white fellas. So, yeah, basically what it was the last escape route out of the caldera when they were being hunted by the Europeans. So the further west you went from there, the women and children, it was too arduous to get out of the caldera. So this spine was the last place you could go up out of the caldera and up into the Lamington National Park area there to get out of the caldera, because they were forcing them back through the caldera, you see. And that's where that tree was standing, on that escape route.
Wow.
Yeah. Anyway, they're just two stories, because I like to use personal stories, because it's rather than telling someone else's stories, where you get these realizations. You're going, how does a tree know language to me? Let's just say I turned up somewhere and I'm a German speaking German national German speaking, and just for example, and you could be in Germany or you could be somewhere else, and something like that happen. Well, you're going to hear it in German, I'm pretty sure. I just, it's a real curiosity how the mind is able to decipher information which is projected, and it can extrapolate the data and decipher it, and so that mind to you hears it. This is obviously, we're talking about audible stuff here, internally audible, and you hear it in language that you know. But anyway, I'm grateful for that.
Oh.
because it'd be a bit frustrating walking away going, what did he say? What did it say?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, if you think about it, Trevor, we have people all around the world that are animal communicators, and they're talking to trees and rocks and spirits and of every language. And when animals speak to somebody in like we've had animal communicators here from different countries, and they will pick a message up from the animal in their language, and I'll pick the message up in my language, and it's the same message.
Yeah.
So it's a universal archetypal frequency that gets transferred. We're picking up the vibrational frequency, which then, as you say, is data that it gets transferred into the word or the concept that's been trying to be shown.
Yeah, that's well put, Joe, because that's basically the conclusion I came to, is that the mental framework and the egregore of the recipient is where the deciphering is taking place. So it's deciphered from source code, basic code, into stuff that you can understand. Yeah.
Yeah. And I've had animals, and I know Sandy's a powerful animal communicator as well. And like, I've raised kangaroos, and my kangaroos would get to a certain age, and I used to sleep on the couch or the bed with them, like they were like babies. And I remember Molly telling me, oh, it's time for me to leave. I'm leaving in 2 weeks' time. And like, we were sort of in that half asleep mode. And I was like, I started talking back to her, no, you can't leave, you're not leaving. And then I realized I was talking to my kangaroo, and because I was in that sort of half asleep mode. And then I woke up and she was gone 2 weeks to the day. She decided, because she lived inside and outside, and then just one day she went and joined the herd, of the mob. And that was that, but and like my stallion that passed away recently, he told me in October, and it was around the 22nd of October, that he said to me he was going to be gone in 6 months. I didn't say anything to Sandy. I said, what's going on with Nutty? And she said, oh, he's got 6 months. He's telling me 6 months. Well, he died 6 months to the day. And And so you can get these very clear messages from animals. And Sandy doesn't live anywhere near me. She just tuned into him and got exactly the same message. And also my farrier turned up, and he's a bloke, and he said, "What's going on with your stallion?" And like, he was aged, he was 25 years old. He's telling me he wants to leave, and I'm like, I was surprised that my farrier was able to pick that up as well. But very interesting that these messages, like, if you're open to receive them,
Yeah.
you will. And we all got the same message.
Well, yeah. Yeah. Good one, Joe.
Yeah, so it's
Good
just
input, yeah.
it's not just trees, or like, it's everything. Do you know what I mean? It can be
Yeah.
plants, rocks. I've had communication. I know many, we've probably all had these experiences. I think it's normal, and this goes back to the 5D always being here, that higher awareness and consciousness. And I think many people throughout the ages have had access to that. I think this is one of the most dumbed down versions of humanness at the moment, per capita.
Well, you're absolutely right. I get rocks talk to me, shouldn't say that, but people say I got rocks in my head. But it's yeah, and I'm well aware it's not just trees. I'm familiar with the animals and that too, but I'm glad you added all that in there with those examples with the animals.
Yeah.
The only thing I've had some experience with is, like, I asked a nest of ants to leave my house and explained that they'd be happier elsewhere, but they were really causing problems. And they left, and I've asked animals, I've appealed to them that they would be happier in a more natural environment. And I'm currently working on keeping the possums off my passion fruit vine, but I haven't succeeded. But yeah, that's more me attempting to communicate with them, and it's not a two-way communication. I'm not hearing anything back, but that's the extent of my experience.
That's quite a common, well, not common, but that's something we all can do. And I had a farm at Yark, and I would create contracts with the native animals. And I remember being down at the Yark pub, and I was talking to the boys. Well, all the boys were around the pub, and they were all saying how, but they've got this wombat problem in the creek. And the creek ran through all the farms, my farm, their farm, all the way up. And so they had this incredible problem with wombats digging holes. And I said, well, you just have to tune into them and ask them not to burrow in the creek, and show them where they can. I said, I've actually allocated a spot on my farm where I've said they can burrow and dig their holes. And they said, oh, what a load of rubbish, what a load of rubbish. And I'm like, yeah, but guys, you're the one with the problem, and I don't have the problem. So it's just interesting how that, when you take time, I also said to the kangaroos, they could take 20% of the pasture, off of our property, and no more than 20% of the pasture, because we had the horses. So I would go into deep meditations and link to what I call their grid, the grid that they have. And so I sort of feel like each animal has its own morphic grid. And when you can tap into that, which I call tapping the field, you can tap in and create a direct communication. And so I've done that with the wombats. I did that with the kangaroos. And when we moved to this property in the Yarra Valley, we had a huge problem with minor birds, like massive influx. Just every horse had about 20 minor birds on their back, and they spread parasites and mites, and and then when the horses mutually groom, it's unhealthy for them. So I said, one of our friends is a hunter. He said, oh, I'll come down and trap them. And I said, oh, I don't really want to trap them. And he goes, oh, they're like sky rats. You just got to get rid of them. They kill everything else off and steal their nest. I said, okay, no, let me just have a chat with them. So I said to them that they had a week to leave, or they'd be trapped. I was giving them an ultimatum, basically. Anyway, the very next morning, I woke up and there was a little baby bird on my doorstep. And this little baby bird, when I looked it up, was a minor bird. And I was like, you know, here I am telling me they've got a week and there's a little baby at the door. So I tuned into the little baby and I found the nest, managed to get it back up in the nest. And then I asked the minor birds, okay, you've obviously got a message by doing that. And they said to me, they came back and said, we need 3 weeks because our babies need 3 weeks to leave their nest. And I said, 90% of you have to go, 10% can stay. And I'm telling you, in that 3 weeks, 90% of them left, and we hardly had any of them in the paddock. But I allowed them the grace to raise their young and go somewhere else. So these are the contracts I feel that we can actually set up in the field with animals, and if you're going to prune anything off trees and stuff, to have a negotiation there. I think it's out of respect. But yeah, like they're the sort of things you can tap the field of any animal and communicate with it. I will say though, trying to work with goats was very difficult. So they seem to not want to tap into your suggestions. But many of the wild, the native animals I've had a lot of success with.
Did you say goats or ghosts?
Goats. Yeah, goats. I had some issues with goats we owned and they would not negotiate. So, yeah.
Well, Joe, native people, like, you know, you see Native American mob and parts of Asia and Africans here in Australia, Native American, either South or North America, all the same thing, what you just spoke about. And you mentioned that, you know, the dumbed down system, don't like that expression, but, you know, the modern system with all the distraction stuff, not knowing all the real stuff, well, you know, they're not doing it. So even to the point where you get the stories where they say the animal gives itself up to be consumed, you know, and there's a certain hunting technique, if you like, where you do that contract thing and ask, you know, say, oh, we need something, are you happy to let us, and one animal will come and it will be you don't have to go through all the stalking and whatever, you know what I mean? And
yeah,
there's
100%.
you know, there's so many stories of that sort of thing. That's exactly the same for what you're talking about. When the ants want to get in the container here, I say, come on, you're not supposed to be in there, and they go. And the snakes come in, you know, at the bottom down here in the wet season to build up, and I'm thinking, hang on, you're unable to talk to snakes because they got no ears.
But you can communicate.
No, it's just a joke, right? But I tell people no point talking to them; they got no ears. But I do. I talk to them because it's just, you know, it's the same thing. It's because the intent's going out through the heart, even if you're just saying the words. But yeah, I pretty much do that here. So because, you know, when you don't, everything becomes a struggle because it's not happening.
Exactly. And that's what I said to the guys at the pub, you know. So, my daughter worked at the pub. So did Sandy, actually. She was my daughter's boss for a while at the art pub. And, you know, they were all, oh, we're going to have to shoot the wombats and, you know, they're making such a mess. And I'm like, you can contract with them. They're open to contracting with you, you know. And I've made many contracts. And with the native animals, I find that there's a pureness in the connection of their spirit to be able to make contracts. As I said, I found it very difficult to contract with the goats. They were very stubborn. So we had some goats that kept getting out, and yeah, I tried everything to try and do that. So anyway, interesting. But yes, I think we can all do that. And I know
it is interesting. It is interesting, particularly with the goats and being stubborn.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say the name of the group, but there is a group that uses the goat as one of their symbols.
Yes, that's really interesting. Actually, I'd never made that link, but there you go. Oh.
Yeah. Anyway, moving on.
Moving on. So let's just maybe, so that we can sort of stay on time, Trevor, maybe you can talk a little bit about the trilogy of the Goana and the serpent.
Yeah. How much time do we have?
Well, we're already into an hour, so I don't know, let's just say 10
Oh,
minutes.
are we?
Yeah,
Okay. Let's just do the Goana and the serpent.
yeah.
Because all the other stuff with the metaphor and I mean it goes on and on and on. But I mean it's worth covering, you know, at some
Yeah.
stage. Even from the point of view of other people with contributing experiences, because sometimes we get I don't personally, but maybe when I was younger, you know, you get the feeling, oh, am I just imagining this or whatever? But when you share with other people, you know, there's all these people around walking around now thinking that they're Robinson and Crusoe, thinking, oh, if I talk to them, they won't know about the jab or whatever, and they think also, you got to talk, because then you find out who is in the same boat as you know.
Yeah.
Just to use a cliche, but anyway. So okay, because I was gonna. There's a whole stuff there with symbols and language and a lot of other stuff.
Well, did you want to do that
And at the end, and that was a lead up into this, but we're going into this now, okay. Which is good.
Yeah.
Sorry. All right. So because in all the other stuff, which we can cover another day, there are some points made where we identify that it's the humans that assign a meaning to an article. And in that context, it then becomes a symbol that is used again and again and again. So we have the basic symbols of sound, and sound causes form. Then we have visual symbols, bodies to us as symbols, different organs and bodies to us as symbols. We incarnate here on this planet as a symbol, fulfilling a role in the universe, unfolding as it should, and so on and so on. But after all that, and then I was getting back to, and I was leading into this with the original people and how effective their symbols are, because this is linked to songlines and stuff too. All right. So there we have the snake, and we have the goanna. And you see the goanna walks in the same fashion. It's a sine wave or a cosine wave. That's the wave form. Okay, so that's energy. The rainbow serpent, a lot of different mob got slightly different stuff attached to it and whatever, but essentially it's physical energy. The rainbow is a physical light spectrum. The rainbow serpent connected very much with the songlines and everything else. That's physical energy, wave formation and all the rest of it. And then the goanna is a symbol of conscious energy. And I may have said this on another session, but not just localized conscious energy. It's human conscious energy. That's the symbol for us mob here, and it can vary a bit around country as well. So when you see LORE and you see these elements in there, particularly when the goanna fights the rainbow serpent, gets injured, and then goes away to recuperate, then afterwards goes back to see where the rainbow serpent went, okay? Because that same storyline, whether they're calling it serpent or yamba or whatever, you're going to see that storyline repeat and repeat, but the names of the serpent and thing can change, and also the goanna can change depending on which part of the country. What's happening there? The rainbow serpent and the goanna have a contest. So that's conscious energy going against physical energy. The goanna gets bitten. He's injured. He goes away to recuperate. When he gets better, he comes back to see where the physical energy went, which direction, and also where it went. So the conscious energy is curious. It plays with things. It gets bitten. It's like you play with fire, you get burnt. You withdraw to recuperate, and then inquisitive mind, you got to go and work out what happened. Okay, but also showing you resilience and everything else there. And then after, when you're better, you go back and see what happened, because you need to understand what's going on, what has happened. Okay, so when you hear the stories, do not disturb the rainbow serpent, or do not disturb whatever their name for that concept of, because rainbow serpents are English words, right? Whatever it is, they're saying, don't play with the physical energy and cause imbalance to the natural system, because you may get something that you never bargained for. And that's the big issue with modern developing technology, and why original people always rejected technology prior to being totally smothered and, you know, inundated with stuff now. But in the, you know, in the past, when the Chinese come here, well before the Dutch, and the Egyptians even before them, and all the rest of it, you know, and they've rejected technology. The Palladians attempt to give them certain stuff, they rejected it. Anyway, just always keeping it with nature. So we're now looking at, because back to the symbols, why have they chosen these symbols? And they're really good symbols, and they stand the test of time. And if you're telling a story to people and they don't understand what the symbols mean, they just don't really get anything from the story. But anyway, so breaking this down, we already see the waveform, physical energy, a serpent, and the goanna has got feet. So that's conscious energy, but it's conscious energy that is grounded. That's what the feet are representing. Okay. So in other words, it's human consciousness. It's here, right? And they both have the trilogy. And usually people are unable to pick where the trilogy is in that. And I'll leave my head where it is, but over on your view, this side here, you can see there the forked tongue. So one, if we go back to, I don't know if I've got that slide here, but when one made two, it automatically made three, and that's your trilogy. Okay. I think I covered that with you folks before. The one and the two and then the three. And so there's the trilogy in both of them, because the trilogy is the third dimension manifestation. You know, wherever it's seeded from, you've got to have that third vibration to cause form in this dimension, and it is referred to as the third dimension. And so all things correlate, it's a trilogy. So look at the tongue. When one becomes two, it automatically becomes three. Got this tongue coming out, and then it branches. So one becomes two, automatically becomes three. So then you say, oh yeah, well, that's okay. Snake's got a forked tongue. Goanna's got a forked tongue. So why did they choose the goanna? Because it's got a forked tongue. Why didn't they choose any other lizard? They all pretty much walk the same. The goanna is the only lizard with a forked tongue. So all I'm conveying here is that when we're constructing symbols and whatever, and we're deciphering symbols and all the rest of it, but what I'm wanting to convey here is that the original mob had such a profound understanding of everything that they work out what is the best symbol to use to represent something. Okay. And so here they have these two symbols that have stood the test of time, cannot be broken down or, dismissed in any other way. They're not personifies, how I talked about personification before and whatever, they use the animals but people still know what it means. So they're not following it. There's no sabership in it. It's just LAW within the LORE, because you need to know what's helpful and harmful, and get all the stories that go with it. But the thing here is that these symbols are not just plucked arbitrarily out of the atmosphere for feel-good reasons. Okay, they've got to have the elements in the graphic that are able to symbolize what's been spoken about, in a graphic form. So that's the business there. And that one there is same but different. I don't know whether I cover that, because while we're on the waveform, you see the modern science, they put a line through, then they go positive and negative. And Blackfellow system is, you don't have the line there. You got the hill and the trough. and it's same but different. So at the bottom there, if you pass a wave in a wave tank and you got a ball floating on the water, you'll see the motion that the ball does. So see the arrow and the wave form is going in a certain direction. The ball rises up the front of that wave, it gets to the peak of that wave, and then it comes back down the other side of the wave down into the trough, and it forms a circle. So that's not linear time, that's progressional time, which is cyclic time. And then as each wave comes, that circle shunts minutely, whatever the wavelength is, that circle will shunt. That's progressive time of cycle. Okay. But it also shows you same but different. So when it comes to mental attitudes of coping, all we need to realize is that it's all the same stuff, but now it's a different version of it. And you know, you got to develop all of right attitudes in a mental framework to be able to cope. Because if you say it's positive and negative, and then you focus on just being negative, and you know how easy it is for people to fall into that trough and just not ever be able to get out, they become entrained in it. It's really hard to, you know, for them to break out of it. But when they have this framework of same but different, it's easy to see, one, it's a cycle, and that's why I always tell the kids it'll pass, you know, and you just hang on, it'll pass, you watch, it'll go. And anyway, all this and more, but this is all to do with a survival attitude. Remember, the detect, decipher, decide is mentalism, and then the other one right beside it is care. Well, care is the attitude that caused mentalism there in the first place, and it's the first attitude that you should be taking. So I just wanted to throw that in because that was sort of all relative to the goanna and the serpent there. Given I mentioned the goanna gets injured, goes away to recuperate. When it's better, comes back to see where the rainbow serpent went. It wouldn't have done that if it didn't have care. Okay, it needed to care so that it could learn. Yeah. Anyway, that's it.
Sorry, I hear
Yeah.
I'm talking to myself. Thank you for that. That was really good because we do often just focus on the ups and downs, you know, the peaks and troughs, and that's a more cyclic,
Yep.
I guess, holistic way of representing the same thing. Yeah, I like that. That was really good. We're already at 8:40, so I might wrap up, Trevor.
Yep,
And
all
anything
good.
we didn't finish this week, we can just go on. You know, there's no rush
Yeah.
to get all of this out.
Because after I spoke to you last time, I got this other thing. I said, "Oh, this is really interesting." So, because there's all pockets of stuff, but they all overlap, you know. And
I
I got to sort of drag enough to make a discussion. But yeah, no, all good. I'll touch base with you, and we can sort of get a feel for what you want to cover next time. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just an ongoing, like as we said, this was just me sharing, you mentoring me and opening that up to other people to ask questions. And so I'll put it out there to anyone. Sandy, is there anything else you wanted to ask, or maybe even for next time?
Okay. Can't think off the top of my head right now, but I'll get back to you with that and send a note or two.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'll put it out to the group if there's any questions. I mean, as we know, Trevor's just like his cup runneth over when it comes to knowledge and wisdom. So I don't think we'll be short of things to talk about. So thanks, Sandy. Thanks, Trevor. I don't know who Samsung SM is, but thank you also for joining in. And we might wrap it up there. So thanks, Trevor. And is there anything else?
No, you're welcome.
Yep. Everyone, well, thanks for tonight, and I'll post this up in a few days, and we'll chat in between, Trevor, and talk about what we'll catch up on next time, and leave it there. So bye, everybody.
No worries. Enjoy, folks.
Never